Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Less Stress, More Peace and Happiness Summit. We have so many great speakers and so many great topics, and I know that you're getting great value and learning so many skills that are going to help you reduce the stress and anxiety and just create a more peaceful state of being and some happiness in your life. My name's Janine Wooten. I'm your host for this summit, and today I would like to introduce you to Melissa Brown. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Melissa, and then we'll bring her on. Melissa Brown has been in the health and wellness field for over 30 years. She has a real passion for embodiment and for helping others understand what keeps them stuck in their patterns and finding more freedom from within. Melissa believes that even though there's so much suffering in the world, she wants to help others feel that they don't have to suffer and that they can tap into their birthright, which is vitality, alignment, and a resilient and regulated system. Her current practice revolves around colorwork, structural integration, teaching, SI, somatic psychotherapy, and functional medicine. One of her deepest passions is the nervous system and the human body in general, and understanding how our unique life experiences have created who we are today. She's passionate about inquiry and getting to the root causes of one's suffering. She loves teaching and educating others so they can start to understand more about why they feel the way they do and learn ways to support their system to embody vitality. Melissa is also a contributing author to the book Nourishing Your Nervous System: What You Need to Know to Care for Yourself in Stressful Times. So please welcome with me, Melissa Brown. Hi, Melissa. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. It's a beautiful day here on Vancouver Island.
Oh, nice.
Very warm. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me here.
And we're excited to hear from you today, especially, right when I read the book title, where How to Care for Yourself in Stressful Times. So obviously, this is one of the reasons for putting on the summit. I feel like a lot of people have had a hard time for quite some time, and we just are offering different modalities, different tips and strategies to help people get unstuck and get back to vitality, like you said. So anxious to find out your take on that. I love to start. I'm going to give you the stage, and I'm going to go to the background there. If you don't mind, I love starting with a little bit about you. If you don't mind, tell us your background story and how you were brought to doing the work that you're doing.
Yeah, you mentioned quite a bit of what I'm doing now and the modalities that I practice. And really, I became curious about this being in the body when I was young, in my teens. And there was something inside of me that knew that there was more than just the television and this conditioning patterns that I was living in. And I started studying Iyengar yoga pretty deeply. I did a lot of different modalities. I attended the University of Santa Cruz, where I went in depth with medical anthropology. So I've been really deeply curious about healing for a large part of my life. And in cultural anthropology, we look at how belief and healing go together. So that was a really wonderful study of mine, which I traveled to Africa and used the healing of music and beliefs to deepen my understanding of how different cultures use their healing practices. But fast forward, after university, I went to massage school where I studied various modalities because I realized then that I actually wanted to be a wellness practitioner, not an anthropologist. I wanted to work hands-on with people and their bodies. And I did that for a while. I traveled, and fast forward, I ended up doing my Hello structural integration training. And that's where my eyes started to really open around my own trauma and my own nervous system. And before that, because we're talking about like the late 80s, early 90s, these words like trauma were only seen in Vietnam War vets, or PTSD only if you'd have this huge event that happened in your life did someone have trauma. And a lot of people didn't talk about anxiety or depression and things like that when I was growing up. So in my Hello Work training, we did so much embodiment throughout our training that I started to really feel that, wow, even though I've done all this embodiment work and all this yoga, and I thought I was this embodied being, and I was to a sense, I was actually frozen. I had this functional frozen state inside of me, and this relational trauma that I saw these patterns playing out over and over in all of my close relationships, especially with men. So I became very curious, and after that training, I decided to do Sharon Stanley's Somatic Transformation 2-year trauma therapy course, which is built more for counselors, therapists, psychotherapists, psychiatrists. And it's a lot like somatic experiencing. In fact, Sharon Stanley helped Peter Levine write some of his somatic experiencing coursework. So she's this amazing being. And then that adventure of learning her work is where I really started to deepen into my own patterns and to understand the polyvagal nervous system, my own nervous system, my own triggers, why I played out these patterns through relationships my whole life, why I had so much anxiety and I didn't even realize how my anxiety was playing out in my life, how the frozen state was playing out in my life, because I was completely functional. I was working and having children and doing all these things, but there was a part of me that was dissociated as well. So by deeply going in and doing the hard work of understanding my own patterns and my own psyche and my own body and my own armor and all of that is when I really started to probably do the deepest work of my life. And that's what led me to understand, like, oh, we don't have to suffer. I believe most people and the people that come to see me have, we're suffering, whether it's emotionally or physically, mentally, spiritually. There's a sense of suffering where we lose touch with who we really are. And as I started to do this journey with myself, I realized, oh, I can help other people through this process. And so it's become a real passion to share, especially around the nervous system, and having people really know that they're not alone, that most of us are exactly the same, and that we all experience stress in different varieties and for different ways, but we don't have to. So if people are willing to get to the root and get a little messy and do the hard work that it takes to discover oneself and get to that vitality, then that's what I'm here for, is to help people really understand that. And then a backstory a little bit, I decided to study functional medicine along the way because I have a child who came down with PANS, which is pediatric acute neuropsychiatric syndrome. And so that was a huge piece in my life where extremely difficult, like throw you on your knees, pray to God, difficult.
Wow.
And through all of that, because there was really not a lot of help for us, not a lot of doctors, and I got clear that I wanted to heal him naturally and get to the root of why this whole thing started. I started studying the Institute of Functional Medicine and just really diving into autoimmune conditions and gut brain health and nervous system. So they all go together. And now I've woven the structural integration with the somatic based inquiry counseling work with the functional medicine. And I feel they all go together, and it's very helpful in my practice. Yeah.
That's I love that, you've used your story and your path and what you've learned, and, that you're using it to help others. But wow, what a triple punch of modalities that you're using. That must be really powerful, using all three of them together. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for someone who might not know, would you just explain a little bit about what each of those are?
Yeah, so Heller Works is a form of structural integration. And structural integration is, a lot of people have heard of Rolfing. That's where structural integration started, is with Ida Rolf, who created the 10 series for Rolfing. And what we do is we work with a person's fascia. So fascia is the connective tissue in a very generic way, the connective tissue, this matrix that is woven throughout our whole system, covering all of our bones, our muscles, our organs, every part of us is covered in fascia, and it's actually our organ of posture. And so by working with one's fascia in a systematic way, we help a person align in the field of gravity. Fellow work also involves inquiry. So we do a somatic dialogue piece where we inquire and help people get connected to how their mind and their body and the felt experience of what's happening on the table in the present moment. And then we also combine functional movement. So we help clients find their patterns of movement, how they sit, how they stand, how they walk, all the things that we do every day. If you're in a sport, what you're doing. And sometimes if you're in a certain pattern that's not helpful, then we teach clients a new pattern that might help sustain the body work that we're doing. Wow. And somatic counseling is a type of somatic psychology. So really it's about doing inquiry work with a person, but really getting them focused on the felt sense in the body. So there's a little bit of story, and then you're constantly bringing someone back into their body. And somatic transformation has certain steps that we use to help a person come into a state of vitality. And part of that is teaching them about embodiment and giving them the education they need to start to understand. And then we go into inquiry, and then we go into what's called somatic empathy, where the practitioner is holding this field of empathy for the client. So I'm starting to feel the client's lived experience so that they feel felt and seen. I'm guiding them back, and then we'll use an intervention. So I'll figure out by their story and by their body language, by how they're presenting, if they're in anxiety or if they're in depression or if they're in freeze, what intervention is going to work the best for them, what neural state that they're in. So I'll pick an intervention. Interventions are like breath work or orienting, some of the things I might teach today that are simple but help bring the nervous system back into a regulated state. And then we go into meaning making, because as humans, we need to make meaning of what happens. And in the science part, it's all the traumas on the right hemisphere and the limbic system of the brain. And then when we do deep dives in there, we want to make meaning at the end and bring it back into the left hemisphere. And that's how you start to create these new neural pathways, is to bring the right back into the left. And so that's really the somatic counseling part that I do. And that's then of course, yeah, it's totally fascinating. It's hard to sum it up in a few paragraphs. Right. Yeah, because it's pretty deep work. And then the functional medicine is really getting to the root cause of illness. So in most Western medicine, we're looking for something to cure the symptom. So if the symptom is I'm having acid reflux, you might go to the doctor and they give you something to curb the acid reflux, which is great. In general, we want to get the symptoms down. So I'm not saying people shouldn't take their medication that's given, but once you're on the medication, and getting control of the symptoms, it's nice to start exploring, like, well, what's going on in my life that's causing this acid reflux or this anxiety or this depression or this pain in my body. And often it's all tied into the vagus nerve and the nervous system and the trauma and the patterns. And so when you really start digging for the root, a lot of it is the gut brain highway. And that's the passion of the functional medicine, is really helping clients. And they really all are getting to the root. So that's how they all tie together, is like working with the fascia, working with the somatic based way of being with someone in a counseling coaching session, and helping someone on a physical level when they're having autoimmune disorders. But they all go together. So
they do. It is really interesting. I've had several of our speakers have addressed the vagus nerve and the importance of having a regulated system, which I've shared with them too, is new to me, that whole concept. But then what you're doing on top of that with all these other, a lot of people start with meditation. So we're starting with, to me, more of a mindset. But yours, it sounds like you're starting with the physical body as well, and then the gut health being connected. It's just fascinating that it's all encompassing.
And even fascia, they know now that where trauma is held in the body, because when we have a traumatic experience in our life, if we don't deal with it in that moment, meaning if we're not present enough to get the help that we need, and we don't deal with it, then that, especially as children, often all of this stuff and these patterns in our fascia and our body build up as children, because that's when a lot of these relational issues show up in our family dynamics and our cultural and our school,
Right.
uh, even in generational traumas that we pick up that we're born with. Certain
Mhm.
aspects about our being is picked up from our grandparents and what they went
Right.
through. So there's a lot of different layers that we work through, and they know now that trauma is actually held in the fascia. And so a
Mhm.
lot of our memory is held in our body, which is held in the fascia. So it's really, you can be working on somebody and crazy memories can come out of them, and dissociated memories that they didn't know that were there even from a young age. And then we help them integrate those memories back into their consciousness in a very safe way.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. There, it reminds me of a friend, and actually she's a doctor, who kept having a pattern. So you mentioned patterns, and I wanted to explore that a little more too. But her pattern was all of her close friends, one by one, and I was kind of the last standing. But I kept hearing these stories of how friends did her wrong, and she was the victim. And I knew some of the friends as well, and so it didn't seem to make sense to me, because I knew these people and I couldn't see them doing anything intentionally to hurt her. Well, anyway, her sister came to visit one time, and they from another country, so they didn't get to visit often. But her sister came to visit, and it came up, and she's 64 at this time. This memory came up of being sexually abused as a child that she had completely repressed until her sister brought it up when she was visiting. I guess they both had been. And so then all of a sudden it makes sense how she's the victim in every situation. And I think it's interesting that you brought up trauma, childhood trauma, and getting stuck in the body, because of course children don't have any skills. They're not aware of the fact that what's happening isn't right, and they don't have skills for coping with it. So I can see how that just gets stuck and carries with you.
Yeah, and part of the skills of coping is to create the armor and to create a way
Mhm.
to feel safe. So as a child, if I'm being sexually abused, there's a part of me that's going to put this armor, and it's not intentional. It's not as if the child says, "I'm going to put this armor." It's just this innate wisdom that our
Right.
bodies have, that we just do that. We say, "Okay, I'm not safe, so I'm going to close off part of my heart," or "I'm not
Mhm.
safe, so I'm going to really clench my pelvis." So I may become an adult with this pelvis is completely clenching, and then I have back pain, or I have
Uh,
gut issues. I wonder, why do I have gut issues, or why do I have back pain, or why do I have, and it's because we're in these holding patterns since forever, and we don't even
wow.
know that we're holding, because we don't know what it's like not to have these patterns, or not to
Exactly.
have. Yeah, so it's brilliant. We're brilliant beings, and
Mhm.
how we put these different layers on and then spend the rest of our life trying to take them
Trying to
off.
understand, right? Understand. And yeah, it must be really interesting working with people, and also very rewarding to be able to help them to uncover those things and work through them and break free of the patterns.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I love it. I love watching people transform,
Hmm.
and it's never, from my experience, it's never ending. It's like there's another
Hmm.
layer and another layer and another layer, and that's the beauty. I think until we die, we just keep uncovering these different layers, and learning how to embody them and to be with them and to understand ourselves in
Right.
relationship to the whole. It's like,
Yeah, yeah, and fall more and more in love with life,
yeah,
as you work through these things and learn and grow. And
yeah,
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 I love that. That's really, really interesting.
yeah.
I was gonna ask you, let's say we talked a little bit about the patterns, but when you're working with someone, is it the conversations? Is that how you find out? Is that how you help them see their patterns and uncover the patterns? Or is it with everything that you do, you're able to, you know what I'm saying? Like, is it a gift that you
Yeah.
have where you can feel, like you say, you feel what they're feeling?
So all of that. So with my hands, I can feel the fascial pattern in their body.
Mm,
Uh, with the inquiry work that we do together, I can start to sense the pattern. So I'll have certain questions around their family life and their history and their relationships. So I'll start to weave together their different patterns of how they show up. Even their pattern with me. Are they looking in my eyes? Are they looking away? How are they sitting? What is their posture like? So there's a lot of different ways that I can recognize patterns,
Yes.
patterns of movement, patterns of thought. So I like to work on this high five level where you look at the physical, the emotional, the mental, the spiritual, and the energetic being, because they all have a pattern. And so that's how I work, is I work on all those levels. And sometimes it's a felt, like I can feel someone's anxiety, I can feel someone's pain, I can feel my body is like this conduit that processes. And so I can feel people's patterns that way. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I really, it's fast. I wish we lived closer. I would definitely, love to have a session myself, just out of curiosity, because it's so vast and so deep.
Yeah. Well, I do Zoom sessions, so I
Oh,
can work
okay.
with anyone. I can't touch you, but
Right.
I can do the
Okay.
somatic and the
Perfect.
mental. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good to know for sure.
Yeah.
What about, do you have like a simple, I know it might be a little bit hard to do, in a short talk. I hate that these talks are so short, because we could just go on and on. It's so interesting, and everybody's brought such great value to the summit in general, and just fascinating topics. But I'm wondering, just because we only have a short time, is there something simple that you could give the listeners, like a little strategy or a technique or something they could practice on their own at home that would give them benefit with reducing the stress and just creating a little more peace?
I do. And if you don't mind, can I talk, because a lot of my work, which I haven't mentioned, and how I also work with people through their patterns, is by educating them around the polyvagal theory. Have you had that here?
No, it's interesting that a lot of the practitioners work in that area, but no, I don't think that anyone has explained it. So please, I would love that.
I'll explain it in a nutshell, because he has
Okay.
a book that's, yay thick and very scientific. But Dr. Stephen Porges really took the autonomic nervous system and brought it into light around the social engagement system. So as humans, we are social creatures. We need each other. We're in tribes, we're in families. That's how we really thrive, is by being with others. And so he took that aspect of the autonomic nervous system, which the autonomic nervous system is your sympathetic division and your parasympathetic division. Sympathetic meaning your fight or flight. Am I in danger? Do I need to run away or fight back? Or your parasympathetic is your rest or digest, and your immobility state. So it used to be called fight, flight, freeze, but that's actually not correct. The freeze or immobility state actually happens in your parasympathetic system. So what happens, and then he brought in how there's 5 different nerves he works with, but the vagal nerve, or the vagus nerve, is one of main importance, because he studied the vagus nerve and how that nerve is very important for social engagement. And so he called, you have something called the ventral vagal, which is part of the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve wanders. It's your 10th cranial nerve. It wanders all into your face, your eyes, your throat, your larynx, your pharynx, into your ears, coming down. It wanders into your heart and your lungs, into your diaphragm, and innervates all of your guts. So the ventral portion of this nerve is about your diaphragm all the way up to your face. And so it moves with the energy, and the movement of that nerve moves very fast. So that's how we can establish whether we're safe, is through people's tone of voice, through the ways that they look at you, through the look in their eyes, if someone's scowling at you. So this is the way in social settings how we connect with others. Like if they kind of look at us, if they smile at us, we might be like, oh, that's I feel good, and I'm in a safe place. If they scowl at us, and our nervous system may go into a state of like, oh, I'm in danger. And then he brought in, and dorsal vagal kind of is the backside, and that is the bottom end of the guts. And so that's where, when we have heavy trauma and depression, that's where the nervous system states may get more sunk down into that dorsal vagal state. So ventral, when we're in ventral, we're more in that vitality state. We're in connection, we're in joy, we're relaxed, we don't have a lot of stress. When we're in dorsal, we're more in a shutdown or a freeze or just shame. That's where shame
Mm,
lives. So when we feel heavy sets of shame, that's we're going to be in our dorsal. We can
mm,
oscillate between dorsal and ventral and sympathetic. So a healthy nervous system would be uh, one that can oscillate in between and not stay stuck in one or the other.
okay.
And then again,
Mhm,
we have the sympathetic, which is where anxiety would live. So when we're stressed and anxious, that's going to put our sympathetic nervous system online. So he took the
mhm,
sympathetic with the dorsal and the ventral aspects, and really by understanding this about oneself, he brought in the term neuroception. So
mm,
when we go into a place, we're scanning our environment, whether we know it or not. We enter into a place and right away we kind of look around and am I safe or am I in danger? And as primitive humans, we had to do this because we were out in the wild climbing trees. We needed these,
mm.
is this tribe safe or are they not safe? Is this, am I going to get eaten by a wild lion today? So our senses were all
Right,
heightened.
right.
And but what happens now is we're not in so much danger as we may have been in our primitive selves. And so these neuroception patterns get conditioned by our trauma, by our relational
Ah,
trauma. If I had a dad that yelled at me, or if I had a mother that neglected me, or if I was, molested or raped, or all of these different things. If in my house they cooked bacon and that's like where bad things happen to me, then I can walk into a restaurant and smell bacon and my nervous system can completely go into overdrive and I don't
wow,
even know why. So
right.
that's how this system works, is by understanding and
Wow.
starting to be like, well, why do I feel so anxious right now? There's nothing happening. And I just walked into a restaurant. And so
Mhm,
a lot of the time we don't even realize that it's happening. So that's part of getting to the pattern of the nervous system.
wow.
What is my nervous system doing? What is my nervous system picking up on these cues of safety or danger? And
Mhm,
that's where all this pattern stuff comes from. And then he has one section of co-regulation, because co-regulation, as humans, we need each other. So you think of a mother and a baby. If the mother is holding the baby that's crying and she's saying, "It's okay, love, I love you so much," and rocking the baby, and she's calm and
mhm,
soothing, the baby's going to calm down. But if the mother's anxious and the baby, she's like, baby, stop
mhm,
crying. Then the baby
mhm.
keeps going and going and going because the baby is co-regulating with the mother. So as humans, in order to
Interesting.
come back, if we're highly overregulated, if we're in anxiety or depression, it's really helpful to be in a regulated presence. And
Mm,
that can be with a friend, that can be, if that friend is regulated enough, it can be with your therapist, it can be with your partner if they're regulated. If people don't have anybody, you can do it with your pets. Pets are awesome to co-regulate
mm.
with. And nature,
Yeah,
co-regulate with the trees, because some people don't have others to co-regulate with as much.
right.
And so, yeah, nature trees. So that's why I really love
Mhm,
working with polyvagal theory, because most people's traumas are relational. And
mhm.
yeah, so one of the exercises that
I
is
love
really,
that. Thank you so much, by the way. That was really a great description of what's going on, and it makes so much sense.
yeah, and I go deeper into this in the few courses that I have,
Mhm.
and I break it down so if people are interested in learning more about it,
Yeah,
because I
perfect.
just kind of threw it out there and it is a little bit more complex, but just to
Right,
give
right.
an idea of why we get in these patterns is because of our social constructs and how our nervous
Yes,
system is patterned through, are we safe or are we in danger? And that's,
right.
as a human, that's what we're looking for all the time.
Right,
And
and
we
the
want to be safe.
hypervigilance, I can see people in hypervigilance and stuck in fear, especially with what we've gone through for the last as a whole,
Yeah.
the last few
Yeah.
years with
Yeah.
the fear and the isolation and the uncertainty and the sickness and the
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
stress, globally, really.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that was great, and I loved the example of the trigger, the bacon.
Yeah.
That's a great
And it can
example
be
of
anything. It can be a
right.
smell. It can, and that's why in relationships, when you're with your partner, people
Mhm,
fight. They get triggered, right? Your
mhm,
partner says something, they may not even mean it in a
exactly.
certain way, but you take it in a certain way. Not always, but often. And so
Mhm.
then I'm triggered, like, how dare him? Or they cross a boundary, or they look
That
at
they
you in a
never
certain
even knew
way.
they crossed.
Yeah. So there's all these
Right.
things happening on the neuroception level that we're not
Uh-huh.
even present to. So then we have to become present and curious. And that's the most
Mm.
basic place, is being curious, you
Mhm.
know, and how when I start to feel my nervous system activate, it's like, oh, what's happening? And so
Mhm.
that's the basis of embodiment, is starting to feel, okay, I just feel this anxiety rush starting in my heart. Okay,
Uh-huh.
let me come back and be present. And what am I? Okay, I'm safe. Actually, I'm here. So part of this is the orienting process, which I
Mm.
like to share with people. And that is bringing, as I mentioned with the neuroception, how we enter into spaces and we unconsciously orient to the space,
Mhm.
you can consciously orient. So when you start to feel, like, let's say you start to feel agitated, or you start to feel the anxiety come up in your system, you can stop for a moment and you can look around your space. So orienting is bringing presence into
Mm.
your, and awareness into where you are. So if I started to feel anxious now, I would stop. And what it is turning your head really, really slow. And
Mhm.
as you turn your head really slow, you're just scanning your environment. And you might look for the colors,
Mhm.
may see what you see, smell what
Mhm.
you smell. So you're bringing in the five senses
Yeah.
along with this exploration. And part of even turning the head, because the vagus nerve, remember, comes out here,
Mhm.
the medulla oblongata is what it's called here, in the 10th cranial nerve, and it comes down. You're actually starting to stimulate the vagus nerve by slowly turning the head and
Hmm.
taking in your environment. And by slowing down and
Right.
being present and taking things in, okay, the sky is blue, I can hear the birds chirping, I feel my breath, I feel my heart beating. That brings you back into presence. And that usually slows, it starts to put
Mhm.
the brake on sympathetic arousal. As Stephen Porges talks about the vagal brake, and the vagal brake is like a brake for the parasympathetic
Oh,
nervous,
okay.
or the sympathetic nervous system, that when, if that brake isn't applied, and it comes, the parasympathetic brake, sorry, if that brake isn't applied, then it starts to come off, then that's when I start to feel that sympathetic energy. And it's
Uh-huh.
okay. It can come up because sometimes we need the sympathetic energy to get us
Mhm.
going, especially exercise or play. It's not all bad. Um, but when we do this orienting exercise and become present and connected, then it starts to put that brake on when we feel the
Mhm.
anxiety or the tension building in our system. So
Yeah, that's
orienting is
beautiful.
one very basic way to come back into the body, come back
Mhm.
into presence, come back and letting myself know, actually, I'm safe and I'm
Mm.
not in danger. And then after that, you can be curious about, I wonder what it was about that
Yeah.
situation, what happened in that situation that activated my nervous system. And that's really where we start the deeper work of inquiry
Mhm.
and starting to understand ourselves more. And sometimes that takes working with another to help you
Mhm. Mhm.
uncover all of those gems that we have stored in our bodies. So that's
Wow.
one. Another one is breathing. So a lot of
Uh-huh.
people do this too, is the parasympathetic breathing, where you have your out breath be longer.
Hmm.
The out breath is longer because that is another way that we put the brake on sympathetic arousal.
Mhm.
So if I'm in that heightened state again and I choose to, like, breathe in for 5 and breathe out for 7, it doesn't have
Okay.
to be that. You can breathe in for 6 and breathe out for 9, but it's more about getting that long extended exhale and
Mm.
doing that depending on how activated you are. Sometimes you can do it for 5 rounds of breath. Sometimes you need 5 or 10 minutes, because if I'm in a
Mm.
super heightened state, it's going to take my body a lot longer to come back into a regulated state, especially if if my HPA axis has been triggered, which is the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal system
Wow.
in the limbic brain. If that's been triggered, then my body gets the flood of epinephrine, norepinephrine, adrenaline, cortisol, and then it's much harder and takes a lot
Yeah.
longer to recover from that. So the hopes are that we
Mhm.
can practice enough that we can stop that process before it happens,
Yeah.
unless we need it to happen. Like if I'm in danger, someone's chasing me, my life is in danger, then we want that adrenaline.
Yeah.
So it's good to have that. We need it, but often people are in that stress state and excreting all of these different the adrenaline and cortisol and everything when we don't need it, and then that causes burnout, fatigue, and adrenal stuff, and so that's when it, gut issue, and that's when we get into this whole sleep disturbances, and it really does all start with stress, and most of our stress is perceived stress, and when we can really, we all have stress, but it's, again, how do we perceive it? How do we work with it? How do we take care of ourselves? And that's why I created the Nourishing Your Nervous System, is to help people understand there's various ways to work with your nervous system. And there is hope. There's hope that you can learn to come into your vitality again, because often people can feel like there is no hope, man. I'm 65, I'm 70, and I've been this way my whole life. And I have a client who now is in her 70s, and finally, after working with me, and she's done lots of meds and psychiatrists, and by doing the somatic work and the inquiry work and inner child work and pattern work and all the stuff that I do with others, she's starting to have hope and understanding and feeling to be able to regulate herself and feel vitality moments more throughout her day than she used to, and being able to stop the ruminating and the mind stuff that causes all the other stuff. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah. So
it's never too late.
It's never too late.
Never too late. There's always hope. I love that. And it sounds like it's just about regulating. So now I'm understanding a little better the term a regulated nervous system. Like being able to slow it down when you need to, being able to let it be ramped up if it needs to.
Yeah.
And then embodiment. I was going to ask you, but I think you covered that too, and what you were saying, what you meant by embodiment.
The field. And, a healthy nervous system is one that can move between ventral to sympathetic to dorsal, because it's not that we're going to be in ventral joy or calm all the time. It's like, I may feel good and then I may get stressed, but am I going to stay in that stress for an hour, or am I going to stay in it for a day or 3 days? Because once we get past, when our stress is going on for a long period of time, and then we're patterned in that anxiety, that's when we start to become sick. So, it's normal for I get stressed, and then I can come back into feeling calm again, or I feel kind of depressed and flat, and then I can come to feeling good again. So it's working with your own system of what makes you feel good, and really connecting. And some of the work that I do with people, the first color work session is about inquiring into what makes you feel alive, where are your vitality moments, what inspires you in your life. And so even if they feel really bad and they have nothing good going on in their life, I just help them and show them that there's something that happened in the past, or you can even create something, because the mind and the mind creates feelings in the body. So even if you imagine being somewhere where you want to be and the sun shining on your face, if that's what makes you feel good, then you're starting to create these new messages in your body of vitality and helping the nervous system regulate. So I like people to know that it's completely normal to move in between these states. It's more just about how long you stay. If you can stay in ventral, that's beautiful. That's where we want to live. And that's where we connect and feel joy and calm. And we hope to live in that state the most, and then oscillate between the other ones. Yeah.
Right. So I was going to ask you about people that were in a state of chronic stress, but you actually anticipated that question and answered that. So
yeah.
So that's great. And you've given us the strategies that people can do to help them at home. And I love everything you've said. It's been really, really informative. Like I said, other people have talked about it as well, but you really went deep, and I learned a lot. So I thank you for that. And I just fascinated by the work you do. I'm sure that you love every minute of it.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I was wondering if I hate that we have to come to the end, but we do. But could you, I'm going to put the name of your gift up, and would you explain your gift to the listeners, please?
Yeah. So I've created a course called Nourishing Your Nervous System. It's with myself and 4 other amazing women, where we go into different ways to work with the nervous system, and on the body, the physical, the mental, the spiritual. So all the levels that I talked about, and I'm giving you $20 off that course with a coupon code. So if you want to check out the course, you'll learn a lot more about the polyvagal theory and different ways to regulate your nervous system. And also the orienting exercise and the breathwork exercise I have free on my website. So if you want to have a more guided way to do it with somebody, you can do it with me on a free videos on my website. So it's another way just to deepen into it. And I go in a little bit more into the polyvagal theory and some understanding around that too. So
perfect.
You can visit it there. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm sure people might feel a little bit like they're drinking from the fire hose with the amount of information, and really just you get the feeling that we're only at the tip of the iceberg. There's so much there. So I know that people are going to want to continue on and learn more. Yeah. So we are going to put a link under the video to your course that they can get the $20 off. And we'll also link your website so they can explore the free options there as well and go further with you. So yeah, I'm going to bring you up and tell you so I can see you better and say thank you so much. I just really appreciate your time and your willingness to be part of the summit and to share this knowledge with everyone. It's been amazing.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and I'm happy to keep sharing, and that's my passion, is to teach others about this and that there is a way out of stress.
Exactly. And as a collective, it's been so good, all the information that we've been able to bring to people. So I'm really, really happy. And every topic has been so rich and so deep. So thank you, Melissa. And
Can I say one more thing?
Yes, please.
One more thing that's really important to me that I don't think I mentioned it, but a lot of people feel a helplessness for various reasons. And they feel like, well, what can I do in the world? I'm just one person, because we have all these things happening in the world. And my belief is that because so many people are sick, and then we see the planet is sick, that we're just this reflection. We're so intertwined. Every being, every cell, every bit of stardust is all intertwined and woven in. And when we heal ourselves, we reflect that out into the world. So we're healing the world. So if you go with that in mind, that the work that I'm doing is not selfish, it's actually healing. It's like when I become embodied and when I become regulated, I am helping other people regulate. When I open my heart, my energetic heart is going out into the world, and I am helping other people heal just by the resonance of my heart, just by my kindness, just by my presence. And we can do that when we start to embody and come back into a regulated nervous system. And so don't ever think you're selfish for doing this work, because this is, if all of the planet did this, I believe we've healed the planet. I have no doubt that our decision, we'd be able to cooperate and communicate and negotiate, and if we all just could come from this compassion and love and connected place. It doesn't mean we won't disagree, but it would help. Ventral vagal is all about connection and listening and and being together, and that's what we are. We're all one tribe. We're all one world, and so that's why I do this, because my hopes are each person that I touch or that maybe gets this message becomes curious and starts to dive into the work. So
and it changes one by one, and that's a great all-encompassing way to end it. One people, one world, one love. Absolutely. Can you imagine, right? And that's what we do. That's why we do what we do, is we love putting out this positivity and teaching people. And it does create that ripple effect. So that was a great way to end. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Have a beautiful day.
Absolutely. I appreciate you so much. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.